Welcome to the D-Dam Mix channel. We invite you to watch our new story. To stay up to date with new stories, subscribe to our channel. It started with Carl coming home from school pale as milk. My little boy, always bouncing with questions and full of endless energy, could barely make it up the porch steps. He moved like his legs were filled with sand. His backpack hung off one arm like it was too heavy for him, and his breath came in short, soft puffs. "Hey, honey," I called out, stepping onto the porch. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer. Just shook his head and kept climbing. I ran to him and wrapped my arm around his shoulders. His skin felt warm, too warm. I helped him inside and laid him down on the couch. His eyes fluttered closed before his head hit the pillow. Panic started to rise inside me. It filled my chest like water, and I couldn't breathe right. I touched his forehead again. Burning. I grabbed a throw blanket and covered him, brushing his hair back the way I used to when he was small and sick with the flu. "You're okay," I whispered, more for myself than for him. That night, the doctor came by. Old Dr. Jenkins, who still made house calls for folks like me, the ones who couldn't afford anything fancy. He wore a windbreaker and carried a black bag like doctors in old movies. His face was drawn with sleep, but his hands were steady. He listened to Carl's chest for a long time, his face growing more serious by the second. Then he looked at my insurance papers, squinting under the yellow kitchen light. Finally, he sighed and closed the folder. "You need a much better plan than this, Emily," he said gently. "His lungs are struggling. He'll need long-term care and medication. What you have won't cover it." After he left, I sat beside Carl and held his hand. It was small and too warm. His little chest rose and fell too fast. I hummed to him, the same lullaby I used to sing when he was a baby. It was all I could think to do. I felt like I was drowning in worry, like someone had dropped me in the middle of a lake, and I'd forgotten how to swim. Then, just before midnight, came a knock on the door. I opened it to find Vanessa, my neighbor. She stood there wrapped in a hand-knitted shawl, a flashlight in one hand, and something sharp and urgent in her eyes. "I heard from the doctor," she said, stepping closer. "Don't ask how. I used to be one, you know. Let me help." I hesitated. Everything in me wanted to say no. I didn't like asking for help. Didn't like looking weak. But I looked back at Carl, pale and still on the couch. And I knew. So I stepped aside, and I let her in. Vanessa moved through the house like she'd done it 100 times before, calm and certain. She didn't waste time asking where things were. She just went to work. Her hands were small, but they moved with strength, lifting Carl gently, turning him just enough to change the sheets or fluff a pillow. She made sure he was comfortable, careful not to wake him. She brought herbal teas that smelled like earth and lemons and something else I couldn't name. The oils she used filled the air with a mix of mint and something bitter, sharp enough to sting my eyes. She opened the windows a little and said the air needed to move. "Sick air gets stuck," she muttered, "and stuck air doesn't heal." She whispered to Carl while she worked. Quiet little things, like, "You're strong," and "You're doing great, sweet boy." Her voice was steady, like it had never known fear. By the third day, the fever finally started to back off. His cheeks had a little pink in them again, and when he opened his eyes, they had some sparkle, not that glassy look that made my stomach twist. I heard him laugh from the living room, a soft, raspy laugh, but it was real. That laugh echoed through the hall like sunlight pouring in after a storm. I stood in the kitchen doorway watching him sit up, propped on pillows. Vanessa was adjusting his blanket. My throat tightened as I looked at the two of them. "I don't know how to thank you," I said, my voice barely holding steady. "You saved him." Vanessa didn't stop what she was doing. She just shook her head slowly. "Money's no use to me," she said. I'm in debt so deep the bank could swallow my house whole before winter even sets in. What could you give me that matters now? She turned to me and gave me a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was the kind of smile you wear when you've already let go of something. That night, after Carl had fallen asleep without a fever for the first time in days, I wrapped myself in a coat and sat out on the porch. The wind picked up, slipping through the cracks in my sleeves. I hugged my knees and stared at the stars. I thought about Vanessa's voice. About the weight in it. And about what she said, that sometimes, the only way to return kindness is with kindness of your own. And I knew I couldn't let her drown alone. The next morning, I went to the mailbox like I always did. Bills, junk flyers, a coupon for pizza. But buried in the mess was a bundle of papers tied with a rubber band. I frowned. My name wasn't on them. The address was Vanessa's. At first, I figured it was a mistake. Maybe the mailman had mixed things up. But as I flipped through the stack, a strange feeling settled in my chest. Every envelope had red print shouting things like past due and final notice. My heart sank. She must have stuffed them in my box. On purpose. Or maybe she was too proud to hand them over directly. Either way, she wanted me to see. I took them inside and sat at my small kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg. I laid each envelope out like a puzzle, trying to make sense of it all. Most were from banks. Some from utility companies. But the worst ones, the ones that made my hands sweat, were about her house. Letters from the mortgage lender, threatening foreclosure. That creaky little home with the peeling blue paint and flower boxes that looked like they were holding on for dear life. They were about to take it from her. I stared at the numbers, my mind doing math it didn't want to do. My savings. Carl's savings. Every dollar I'd scraped together from cleaning floors and waiting tables. It wasn't much. But maybe, just maybe, it was enough. I didn't let myself think too hard. I stuffed the notices in my purse and walked straight to the bank. The teller behind the glass looked up when I stepped forward. Her name tag read Susan. She blinked as I laid the stack of papers and my checkbook on the counter. I want to pay this off, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The whole thing. Whatever's left. Susan glanced at the totals, then back at me. Are you sure? I nodded, even though I felt like my chest was full of bricks. Yes. Please. Mark it paid in full. The next week crawled by. I checked the mailbox every day until finally, a crisp white envelope arrived. A letter from the bank. Vanessa's account, closed and cleared. I didn't even take off my coat. I ran straight to her house, smiling for the first time in days. I knocked hard, ready to see her eyes light up. But the door stayed closed. And the house stayed silent. I knocked again. Harder this time. Vanessa? I called out, pressing my ear close to the door. Nothing. Just the wind pushing dry leaves across the porch. I tried one more time. My knuckles stung. Still no answer. A strange chill ran down my spine. I stepped off the porch and walked around to the side window. I cupped my hands around my face and looked in. The house was empty. No rugs on the floor. No teacups in the sink. No papers on the table. The little corner lamp she always turned on just before sunset, off. Her reading chair, the one with the soft cushion and faded quilt draped over the back, was gone. Gone. Like she had packed up in the middle of the night and erased herself. I stood there for a long time, not sure what to do. The cold crept into my shoes. The silence felt too big, like it might swallow the whole street. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking maybe I'd missed her. Maybe she was just out. Maybe she'd come back. But the next day, I saw them, men in suits, black cars parked outside her house. They carried clipboards and boxes. I watched from behind the living room curtain, heart pounding like a drum. One of them walked out with what looked like a framed picture. Another rolled up a rug and shoved it into the back of a van. I backed away from the window, hands shaking. Had she sold the house? Did I misunderstand everything? Had I been tricked? My stomach flipped at the thought. I wanted so badly to believe that Vanessa was good, that what we had shared meant something. But doubt is a sneaky thing. It doesn't knock. It just slides in, quiet and slow, curling around your heart like smoke. Still, there was a voice inside me. Soft but firm. Wait. She wouldn't just vanish. Not her. Not after Carl. So I waited. Every morning, I made my coffee and stood by the kitchen window, watching her empty porch. Hoping I'd see her again, shawl wrapped tight, that warm, sideways smile on her face. But days passed. And she didn't come. It was 2 weeks later when I heard another knock. A man stood at my door in a neat gray suit. He carried a leather folder and spoke in a soft, serious voice. "I represent Vanessa," he said. "May I come in?" He sat at my kitchen table and opened the folder. Inside was a single envelope. She asked me to deliver this if anything happened. I opened the letter with shaking hands. It was her handwriting, small and neat. She wrote about how she knew her time was near but didn't want to burden anyone. She wrote about Carl, and how much it meant to her to help. She wrote about me. "You reminded me that kindness still exists," she wrote. "You gave without asking, when most would have walked away." Tears ran down my cheeks before I reached the last part. "I left everything I had to you, Emily. If the house was saved, it's yours. If not, know I died grateful. You were the only family I had left." The man cleared his throat. "The debt was paid in full. The deed is yours." I cried harder then. Not because of the house, but because I'd never get to tell her how much she meant to me. Never get to sit on her porch and sip her strange tea again. Never say thank you the way I wanted to. But somehow, she already knew. Write in the comments what you think about this story and subscribe to our channel D-Damn Mix.